Oh, that's so much better. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to my channel. My name is Margaret Pinard. I'm a historical fiction writer and an eclectic reader. And today is time for a wrap up because it's a Wednesday. So, hello and greetings to everyone. It is a hot chocolate type of morning. I had a cup of tea and it was terrible. I don't know if it was the tea bag or the sugar, but it was very off. It tasted like a mix between a citronella candle and cat litter. So bad. Anyway, we're getting rid of that with the hot chocolate flavor. And what I have for you today is 4 book reviews. One of them is a zine, plus a chapter review because I'm reading a chapter a month for a slow readathon. So lots of good things. And then I'll dip into 3 of my current reads because they relate to some of the books I'll be talking about today. If you're new here and you like reading nonfiction and mystery and romance and talking about climate catastrophe and just learning new things and being curious, please subscribe to the channel and I'll see you around. I do Wednesday wrap ups, 2 productivity streams a month, and Sunday streams for other stuff about authorship or readathons or book tags. So that is what you are in for. I've also got a question of the day today, which has to do with Grace's How to Do Nothing-a-thon. And the question is, what's the slowest you've ever read a book and why? What was the book, right? Because this chapter a month thing is going to make it a very slow read. So I'm wondering if anyone else has done that intentionally, accidentally, and what your reasons were. Because slow reading, maybe it's a new thing. Let's talk about it. All right. Yeah, I think I remembered everything so far. So, hello. Oh, Monique. Hello. She's joining live and yeah, exclamations. Yeah, hi. Cat paw, that sounds awful. I know. But that was the last tea bag in the bunch, so hopefully if it's the tea bag, I won't have to suffer through anymore. I did get new berries tea, which I like a lot better, but the sugar hasn't ruined it, so I don't know. It's probably the tea bag. This is actually a new hot chocolate flavor from a local chocolate shop that they made orange with hot chocolate, and that's my favorite combination, maybe tied with raspberry and chocolate. They changed their sourcing from an African country to a South American country, and I don't know how I feel about that. Their name is Mama Ganache, and they're sort of built around this like Francophone Africa history, but then they said that latest chocolates from Honduras for cost reasons. I was like, okay. Anyway, also, if anyone knows this, let me know. Orange and chocolate. The Cafe Borgia is a classic, but I went to a coffee shop on my drive down here and ordered an orange hot chocolate. And then they said, oh, sorry, we can't do that. The orange syrup makes the hot chocolate milk curdle. And I was like, is that a drink thing or is that a you thing? Like a lot of people have figured this out. So I was a little skeptical, but whatever. We're passing on from the drink discussion to books now. Hi, Elaine. Good morning. Elaine was out enjoying the sun and birdsong. That is excellent. Yeah. The birdsong is nice. I was listening to a podcast on my phone in bed and it hit 8 o'clock this morning. And the minute it hit 8 o'clock is when the neighbor's carpenter decided to do a saw with his sawing machine. And I was like, he'd been waiting there for like an hour to do this, probably. He did it twice and then he didn't do it for another half an hour. And I was like, please be done. Please be done with this like 10 by 10 project that you're taking over a week to do. Like, really? So anyway, lots of fun stuff going on here. Monique says, nah, I want to read it and get it over with. Same with everyone else. Okay, so you haven't read a book slowly ever. Even like against your will. All right. I'm going to star these and answer halfway through. So let me get rid of the banners and I'll leave the question up in case people want to answer. But I'm going to start with the first accomplishment, and I have great notes for this. So this is not the book, but the chapter. Oh, it's falling inside. There we go. Okay, so here's the book. This is one of the readathons I'm participating in this year, run by Grace at Books and Cooks. And I think she's calling it the Do Nothing-a-thon. I'm going to pop the link in here, which I prepared. And it's called How to Do Nothing by Jenny Odell. And I've read the introduction, March, and then April's assignment was chapter 1. So I've got a few notes from chapter 1. The premise, resisting the attention economy. Well, maybe you can hear the saw now. It's about Jenny Odell, basically interrelated essays where she's reflecting on art and creativity and the media environment and the attention economy and how all these things sort of interrelate and not in a good way. So Grace is encouraging us to slow down and think about the interrelations, and I think that's a great project. So I'm very excited to participate. And here is my first note. So for this chapter, she's talking about how she was going to give a talk, kind of like a TED Talk about art. And she was trying to think of what to frame it around, what was going to be the nucleus of this presentation. She was sitting in a rose garden in Oakland. And she gives a little background on the rose garden, how it's situated, how it came to be saved and, set aside for a public space. And then she talks about public space and she talks about different things. So I like how she's musing on this in a space and grounding herself, which we don't often get when an author is writing. It's like they've come down with tablets from the sky. And she mentions an artist called Eleanor Coppola and her 1973 installation called Windows. And I'll just read the quote here. Coppola's map. So the public art project was a map with a date and a list of locations in San Francisco. Coppola's map reads, Eleanor Coppola has designated a number of windows in all parts of San Francisco as visual landmarks. Her purpose in this project is to bring the attention of the whole community art that exists in its own context, where it is found, without being altered or moved to a gallery situation. Did we hear Bean speak up as well? Everyone wanted to talk at the same time. And so what I like about this piece is that I often do not understand modern art, very experimental art, very statement art, right? But this, I can understand the point. And the point is that someone appreciated vistas in the city and saw that what she was viewing was art in its own context, people expressing themselves. And so she wanted to share that with other people. And the point that she's making is that art is going on everywhere if we just observe and listen. And listening comes up again later. And we don't have to alter it and remove it to a gallery situation where access is limited and time is limited, etc. So I just thought that was really expansive. It was really opening feeling where a lot of times art and creativity feel gate kept. So I liked that. My second observation was a historical reference, which I'm going to love. It's to Samuel Gompers and his labor campaign. Isn't it page 13? Yes. Okay. So she has the movement from Samuel Gompers and its song. She has the verses of the song, but the slogan that they used for their campaign for, 8 hours for work, 8 hours for rest, 8 hours for what we will, was like the ending line of each verse. And that is what they were going for, right? So I like how she points out that campaign was about a demarcation of time. So it's interesting and certainly troubling to understand the decline in labor unions in the last several decades alongside a similar decline in the demarcation of public space. Okay. And so I thought it was interesting because 8 hours for what we will, what she's discussing is that you don't have any say in what I do in those hours. It's my choice. That's part of the freedom of being a human, right? And having basic public rights, basic rights. And so that's a boundary of time. That's saying like, I'll do what for you during my work, I do for me during the rest. And like, we're being human and social animals and whatever in the other 8 hours. And you don't have a say in what we do. And so that's a demarcation of time. And so public spaces as a demarcation of space is sort of linked to that, because where are people going to spend that time? Where are they going to be social? Where are they going to choose what to do without any outward constraints? Well, public spaces are a big part of that. So if those decline and are torn down, built up, privatized, then you kind of run out of places to be what you will, which is a bigger picture. So I liked that she pointed that out. And before I do the last one, I think I'm gonna catch up. Helene says my neighbor had renovations for 5 summers. Yeah, that's just trash. That's not being a good neighbor, in my opinion. Like, no. I feel it. My mom really feels it. Jocelyn's here. Happy Wednesday, peeps. Came by to give a like. Thank you, Jocelyn. Monique says, I remember reading The Dark Half in under 2 hours. Got the reading bug in the 5th grade, so there's no such thing as reading slowly. Okay, well, I'm doing this intentionally so that I can absorb some of the lessons and share them as I go, because I feel like if I read something really fast, they all sort of whiz by and I don't have time to write it down. I don't have time to talk about it and sort of link things. So that's the point of this readathon, is to go slow. Elaine says, I have that down to an art skill. Interrelations, good to think about. May have to check that book out. Very good. I got my used copy. Eloise is here. Hello, hello. All right, I'm going to save that for a little bit later. And JC says, hey, Margaret. Hey, JC, welcome. That is a speedy read for sure. I've never heard of Dark Half, so I was not impressed. But apparently Elaine's telling us that's something to be impressed about. Okay, cool. I was at 1 a week after they were all out. Oof. I had to look and see if that sound was Panther. No, that's Bean chiming in. Yeah. So Mojo's a fast reader. And let's see, I'm going to star the others. I'm going to try to get halfway before I go through the answers so we can see if there's any patterns and whatnot. See? Hello, Sci-Fi Reads. You are spannered. So, do with that power what you will. Or answer the question of the day. I am up to a very personal note in the book. So she is a bird watcher. She mentioned this several times. And so she mentioned, let's see, I've got it here. And I'm going to open. And then I'm going to share. She mentions this, and it made me feel very included because I was like, oh, I have that. So 19. In the middle of this post-election heartbreak and anxiety, I was still looking at birds, not just any birds and not even a species, but a few specific individuals. First, it was a couple of black-crowned night herons that reliably perch outside of a KFC in my neighborhood almost all day and night. And I thought that was hilarious because I just met one of these a few weeks ago. So I went to a coffee shop and I came out and there was a lot of ruckus in the tree above. It was a strawberry tree. There's a lot of ruckus. And I don't know. Let's see if I can make it bigger. Yeah, I mean, can you see this handsome specimen? I looked and it was walking around, it was, like, crashing around and not bothered at all by all the humans below. So I was staring at it and trying to figure out what it was. It's not a pelican, it's not a seagull, it's not any other bird, like, I know. And then other people walked by and started looking at it, and then they started looking it up on their bird app, and so I was causing this minor scene on the sidewalk, until finally I started looking up coastal birds, and this was exactly it had, like, red eyes, and it had the black stripe on top, and it was big, and, Jenny Odell describes it kind of like a football. Um if you've never seen one, night herons are stocky compared to other herons. My boyfriend once described them as a cross between a penguin and Paul Giamatti. They have a grumpy stoicism about them, sitting hunched over with their long neck completely hidden away. I sometimes affectionately refer to these birds as the colonels because of their location, KFC, or my precious footballs because of their shape. And I could sort of see the football comment. So I just thought that was delightful that I reread this book and this chapter right after having seen for myself and found out that it's called a black-crowned night heron, and they live right by me, or 10 miles away, where I like to go to the bakery on Fridays. So that was very exciting for me. But yeah, so that was just a personal note that, like, bird watching and listening and paying attention is its own reward, but then also I get a little extra bump when I could see it mirrored in nature, which is cool. So that's that. And then the final note was about the listening. So 23, let's see if I get the quote ready here. So when she talks about doing nothing, it's definitely not an invitation to not be engaged with your community or how your government runs things, whatever, or not vote. It's not that kind of do nothing. It's more of a be still and listen kind of do nothing, because a lot of us can get pulled into the need to do lots of tasks and be lots of places and forget that the other half of being able to act is being able to rest and being able to understand before you act. And so I just thought that was really neat. She talks about the two things about doing nothing that she wants to highlight were um, self-care and, like, the rest part. So I just said self-care is about rest, but this book, which I am currently reading, Rituals for Climate Change and Sustaining Spirit, Naomi Ortiz's other book, are beautifully modeling the kind of self-care that I think Jenny Odell would really be interested in, talking about. So these books are sort of talking to each other in my head, which is lovely. And then also deep listening. So in the same way that a bird watcher, like in The Residence, for example, has to be still and listen to try to find what they're looking for. She talks about someone named Berardi who does research on communications, and Berardi highlights the difference between connectivity and sensitivity. And connectivity indicates things are all linked up and there's an automatic system and the light goes on and it races through the network and, like, it's connected, right? So that's automatic and it's pretty meaningless. Sensitivity means that you're getting a deeper understanding. So it's not just that things are all linked, it's that different bodies, different objects are paying attention to each other. And so that intentionality is like much more of a feat than having, like, an electric line connecting them. And so it's more meaningful to do this deep listening. So I liked that we were doing all this sort of analyzing of the meanings of the words that we use and the concepts that we take for granted um, in this chapter. And especially because I feel like I've been doing a lot of deep listening as sort of a desperate measure. When you can't do much else, I think that that is something that may wake you up or may enable you to crawl back to who you feel you want to be. So, loving this reread. Thank you to Grace for organizing this idea, and happy to be taking part. Let's see. Elaine says Dark Half is a King doorstop. Oh, okay. Stephen King. Gotcha. Jack says, probably her smoke. I think that's an answer. All right. Cool picture of the bird. Jack, I'm coming back to the question answers in a couple books. So we're trying to do it mid-show so that we have them all together. Let's see. Looks like a little penguin. Yeah. Hi, Laura. Yeah. The author said a cross between a penguin and Paul Giamatti, which I thought was pretty funny. Cat Paw says, yay, I just discovered JTJRAS a couple of months ago. Oh, this is for Jack's comment. Gotcha. Okay. Awesome. I want to try some of her longer form work. All right. So we're talking about books in the comments. Excellent. Alien says, can't be helpful to others if you don't take care of yourself first. I think red might be my color. I brought a lot of red with me. I think I'm aware of that. I probably need to like switch it up. Cat Paw says, re-sensitivity. You may enjoy reading the Ash Files post today on Substack. I shared it on Blue Sky. Oh, okay. I'll star that too so that I remember to go back. Okay. So that is just the first chapter on reread for April. And if you want to join in, you can always race to catch up. But I'd advise you to take it slow. For May, we'll be reading chapter 2 of How to Do Nothing. And it's feeling good. It's feeling very affirmational. Okay, so on to the books. Oh no, before we do the books is the answers. All right, so now I get to go to your answers. So Elaine said The Hidden Life of Trees by Peter Wohlleben. Interesting read. I think you just said this is the one you're reading currently, because it talks about sentient nature and plants. I think I read a different one by Peter Wohlleben, but I did not jive with his writing style, but I'm glad you're enjoying it, so that's excellent. Cat Paw says, kinda. It's a very deep Buddhism book, and I've fallen off the wagon. I'll try to find the title. Okay, so the slow read, I think. Eloise says, my answer to the question is I think it took me 6 months to read a Game of Thrones book. All right, so maybe not intentional, but because your attention was waning, because it's a friggin' labyrinth of plot lines is what I hear. I have not tried. Cat Paw says the Tibetan Yogas of Dream and Sleep by Tenzin Wangyal Rinpoche. Oh, Rinpoche. I think I've seen that before, but I think that's a common name for that field. So maybe that's not the person I'm thinking of, because the first part I don't remember. Okay, so I understand books that are about practitioners, you kind of have to read them slow and do it yourself and then come back to see if you understand it. It's kind of like how I mean, when you read a manual and put something together, for example, a gazebo, you have to read it to see if you get the general idea and then start assembling and then read it again and then go back to assembling. And you have to kind of go back and forth to make sure you're doing it right. And I feel like a book that's about sleeping and dreaming and, like meditation maybe, might have this aspect to it. But tell me if I'm wrong. Maybe that's not at all why it took so long. Let me know. Elaine says, slowest read, 10 years. Long story, complex work, and put it aside until the time was right and finished it in a couple days. See, that's magnificent. I really like that. 1, because you could appreciate that it wasn't the right time. 2, that you could remember that you needed to come back to it. And 3, that you found the right time for it and it just clicked. So that's success. That's really cool. Okay, so Jack's answer, probably Her Smoke Rose Up Forever by James Tiptree Jr. If you're not familiar, that's a pen name for Alice Sheldon, who led a really interesting and ultimately tragic life. I do remember learning that this sci-fi author was a pen name for a woman. I didn't know the woman's name, though, and I didn't know it was a tragic life. That's a bummer. But a very slow read. Interesting. And why was it a slow read? Did you tell us? I'll go back and see if I have an answer. And then Cat Paw says, oh no, this is the one that I saved for myself. Okay. Going through all the stars. Put the wrong title in my community post. I think it was Wisdom of Trees. Yeah. All right. Cool. So, yeah, that's why I'm slow reading that book. Other books that I've read really slowly, for example, the ones that are like soft DNF'd or paused or whatever you want to call it right now. Um, it just like there's one about the post office transforming America, and I kind of feel like the writing wasn't jiving. I may actually DNF that. I don't know. We'll see when I get back. I really like the author's other work, but I want to give them a chance, but like it's not interesting. So that's why I think I'm struggling inside to make a decision. I do that. So, yeah. All right. Now on to the books. Okay, so I have a few here that are for HRCYED, the hardest reading challenge you will ever do, HRCYED. And Cat Paw will be delighted to realize this is on the list. So I've had this book for a really long time. It's about Boudica. It's historical fiction about 30 AD. So just as Rome was coming over for its second attempt on Britannia's shores, we get a background, a very deep and detailed background history of the tribes of Britain and one of the leaders who became a legend. There's a little gnat. I don't want it in my hot chocolate. Named Boudica was her like warrior name, her name of legend. And so this first book is one of 4. It's going to satisfy the 4 or more in a series that is completed for HRCYED. And it was a really hard prompt to figure out how to fulfill. So I'm glad I found this one. But my goodness. Okay, so Cat Paw was saying you kind of have to stop a lot and absorb. And I know now why they said that. So I would definitely label this series as devastating. Part of that is the dramatic tension because some of it, they tell you what's going to happen before. And like dreamers are part of this world in terms of like religious leaders in the community that see part of the future. So that's part of the dramatic tension. But also towards the end, people are separated and you know what happens to them when they don't know what happens to each other. And so that was just like, oh. So I am reading the second one. Of course, I don't have a matching book, but I'm not mad about it. I'm not one of those people. I had to order this because I couldn't find it anywhere. The second book is called Dreaming the Bull, Amanda Scott's Boudica series. See, I'm losing the books here. And Dreaming the Eagle is setting up the childhood and sort of launch of Boudica, who becomes the Boudica. And yeah, what is really well done in this book is the historical detail, the familiarity. It's almost bewildering, the level of detail, down to weapons, down to horses, down to architecture, down to geography and ritual. I mean, and some of that could be made up, but it felt very well researched and real and feasible. So also, the devastating part is because there is such love in this book. So you get a very tight-knit tribal society with very close bonds and lots of violence happening. And so there's a lot of love and there's also a lot of hate. So that's like the emotional roller coaster is real in this one. And I'm really enjoying it, let's say. But yeah, it's not like a heavy read. It's not like some of the nonfiction where you're listening to people's trauma and like, I need to take a break. This is really sad and depressing. It's like, oh, they're fictional people, but yeah, it just feels very real. All right, so that's the series prompt for HRCYED. That's the only one that I have finished for HRCYED. So the next one I was going to do is for funsies. That is this one. So I found this for $5 at the place where the heron was. And this was just a fun Victorian murder mystery. I really like the William Monk series by Anne Perry. Anne Perry recently passed away. So Corridors of the Night is later in the William Monk series, and I've sort of skipped around. I haven't read them all in order. they're hard to remember what the order is, and it doesn't really matter because you kind of know where it's going. And so what I appreciate about Anne Perry's writing style, and this book in particular, I read it in one night. It's very fast paced and page turning while also being very well set up, structured, tension wise, and historical details. So by this time we're in the 1860s, and the action centers around a married couple. One is a nurse, one is a policeman on the Thames. And I love that this is showing us that even when they're apart, they depend on each other. And so they sort of mentally rely on each other's resources, which I really liked. This one also features kids in danger, but they're very scrappy and they contribute and they're emotionally involved with the plot as well. There's lots of London detail, which I loved, and 1860s setting and colorful dialects, which I just soaked up. There's also, it's kind of like Law and Order, how Anne Perry's books run. There's a section which is talking about the crime and the mystery, and then there's a section which is talking about the legal courtroom drama aspect of it all. And sometimes like the mystery catches up and there's an additional thing thrown into the legal part, but that's basically how it's divided up, kind of like your Law and Order setup, where it's first police and then the courtroom. And especially in the legal portion, they're talking about the moral question of medical experiments, because this book involves some medical experimenting, and they're trying to find a cure for white blood disease. And I'm not sure what that is. People probably know if they're in the medical field, which I am not. But I found that to be really compelling, because they're asking, well, when does it matter to you? When does it matter to science? When does it matter to future generations? Like, how do we balance these? What about consent and all that stuff? So she just touches on it, but it's a good question to raise, and something that's primarily a murder mystery, but also smart and like making these things a little bit more high stakes by putting that question in there. So yeah, she's really good at doing that. All right. So then I've got 2 for people April. Let me catch up on the chat before it doesn't make any sense to me. Cat Paw says, most of my Buddhism books are read a chapter before bed kind of books, or sometimes a month for it to percolate. Percolate is such a good word. Rinpoche is an honorific title. Oh, that's good to know. I didn't know what it means. Okay, very cool. So I've got 2. Whoops, let me keep going. Jack says, resending The Reason Why. It's a collection of really shocking, dark, strange short stories that required lots of intent, focused reading. Oh, okay. I didn't star that because I didn't know it was the answer. Thank you. Okay, connecting that for me. A lot of intense, focused reading. Okay, so you like the reading sprint, it seems, and then like take a break. That makes sense. Hi, Jim. Don't forget to book the like button. Thank you. It's so weird that Anne Perry writes murder mysteries when what she did as a teenager. She has passed away, I think, in the past year or 2. So I get those used anyway, but yeah, they're not going to her estate. So if anyone has moral quandaries about supporting someone who did a crime and did the time, which I don't, but yeah, I don't know who her estate is going to. That'd be an interesting question. All right, so next book is, let's see, the one for people April and for research. So you saw me with this tabbing earlier for a tag, but this is Daniel O'Connell, Nationalism Without Violence by Raymond Moley. So could have done this for the Irish Readathon or the Celtophile Readathon, but didn't get through it for March. Got through it in April. And I was mainly reading because I am writing a story that has to do with early 19th century politics in Ireland and Scotland. And I wanted to roll into something land reform, land security related. So the big politician in the room was Daniel O'Connell. He is a person who is credited with sort of making a nation of a very oppressed, poverty-stricken people, and sort of carving active participation out of that people. So I learned a little about how he did that, a bit of the details, even though the author goes into the fact that no one wants to write about this stuff because it's boring. And it's like, well, you're writing about it. So, okay. It was pretty good in terms of engaging, not as good as the John Murdoch book, I will say. But again, it wasn't a biography. It was more of a biographical essay, he says, even though it's 240 pages. It's an essay. Let's see. It gave me lots of leads for a person who I want to use as a cameo in my book, but there's no ringer yet. There's no person who is like walked in, and once I look up their biographical details on Wikipedia, I go, oh, I could definitely use this convergence of details. But we'll use him as a stand-in for the time being. I also got a better understanding of the main issues. In the UK, in the parliaments, in the unions, in the priorities of legislation, in the alliances, especially, and the personal feuds. Oh my gosh, Peel and O'Connell hated each other. Like, there's some interesting stuff in there. I can't really judge the title of this, Nationalism Without Violence, yet, because that wasn't really the stress. I mean, his main thing is that he wanted to become a nation in Ireland without violence, and he stressed it especially towards the end of his career in the 1840s, when young Ireland was sort of stepping in and his energy was sort of waning. So, and then as soon as he died, in the next year was another revolt, and so people got, killed and put in prison. So lots of like ups and downs in Irish history, and this helped a little bit illuminate the 1820s to 1840s period I'm researching. But the sign off was like a little bit like, and so don't let the tyranny of the government overstep, da da da. And it sounded very religious, right? And so I was just a bit turned off by the ending. And then I looked up the author and I was like, oh yeah, 1970s conservatism. Meh. So but, that's what happens when you get used books. You don't know who they're from, and you take it with a grain of salt, and then you can evaluate what information it gives you. So that was a good read, and we'll see who I end up going with. I'm using this month to follow up some research leads very slowly, I must say, because of all the other jobs I'm having to keep up with. But yeah, eventually we'll decide on who it will be, and it might be Dan O'Connell. We'll see. Another People April read is next for my last book, and it's a little zine. And I loved the title. If you don't recognize this, if you're in Portland, this is Microcosm Publishing. Joe Beal is the head, along with Ellie Blue, I believe. And I saw this in a local architecture bookstore, which is new to me, and so I had to check it out. And it's called How to Ride Slow: Bicycling in the Age of Whatever Topic is Trending on Social Media This Minute, which I thought was hilarious. So, and it was just $4. So I was like, why not? It was published in, I think it's a couple years old, 3 years old, something like that. It doesn't say. But yeah, zine. I don't often get zines, but this tickled me, and so I read it. And what it is, if you don't know about Microcosm Publishing, because I regularly watch some of their videos that they put out on YouTube. Their issues, kind of like MK puts out, MK Williams. They're just issues in the publishing industry, especially supply side, that you may not know because it's like in between. It's the wholesale. Microcosm, as a publisher, does its own work and publishes it, but it also publishes lots of other people. It has a warehouse. It doesn't really have a retail thing anymore because of the pandemic. But anyway, so they're on all parts of the business, including book selling. So they've got lots of interesting experiences, and they're very analytical. So they have great videos. And if you are interested, check out their channel. Right. Oh, wait, no, that's not it. Let me redo that. There we go. Microcosm Publishing. So I've watched their channel for ages, and this is actually about his bike journey. So Joe Beal talks about his autism and how through biking in this zine, he's learned how to negotiate foreign norms and sort of interpret them so that he does better with his environments, which I liked. And yeah, it's a short book about how when he first came to Portland, this is what he noticed, and how he bikes has changed. And now that's what he's noticing about this and that. And so, yeah, as someone who like barely bikes, I just thought it was like still really useful. So recommend. Um, so yeah, so those are the 4 books and the 1 chapter for today. And then I'm gonna talk about some current reads. But first I'm going to ask if anyone has upcoming events so you have time to share, and then I'm going to talk about 2 of mine. So my current reads, hopefully I didn't destroy the books here, are continuing in the same vein. I've got the second Amanda Scott book, Dreaming the Bull, and it's already starting out really heartbreaking. We have 2 POV characters, I think, in the first book, and we still have 2 POV sort of places that we're switching back and forth. And one of them is like, it's like a stab to the heart every time he comes up against something. So I'm really enjoying it. I got it from Half Price Books, did I? Yes, I did. That's where I got it. And yeah, we'll let you know. It's Celtophile, it's historical fiction, it's ancient times, so I might actually like qualify, although we're past that for Historathon. And it's not, well, that's historical fiction, so it doesn't qualify anyway. Never mind, erase the last 20 seconds. But it's really well written and I'm enjoying it a lot. I just wish the characters got better luck. And it's heartbreaking. All right, we are reading Rituals for Climate Change, which I didn't know, but it's a poetry book. And the poems are basically going through this person's ritual. So Naomi Ortiz. I've also started reading her other book, Sustaining Spirit, which I had also checked out from the library. And I like that format better, but I'm going to try to finish this first and report out on it because as soon as I get back to Portland, I have to return it. It's overdue. So there's that, which will be in a couple weeks. And then finally, if Eloise is still here, I started Eloise's book, Maiden of Artemis. So I've got a little taste of how she's setting up her characters, her alliances, her tone, her conflicts, which is interesting. And yeah, again, ancient times, if you want to call gods and goddesses ancient times, but it's setting up Artemis and a bet or a rebellion, I suppose I should say. So someone's trying to shake things up, and I think it's going to be through the humans. But that's my prediction based on 25 pages. So that is also satisfying a prompt for HRCYED. So more of the same. All right. So my, let's do this. My upcoming event is going to be Final Friday's productivity stream. So in 2 days, I have my final Friday for April, and I usually do 9:30 to 11:30. Just join me to sit and get some work done and chat in between and sort of boost each other's focus and drive to be able to maybe do something that's a little difficult. So give each other a little bit of moral force or moral fiber for the day. So that is the next thing on my channel. And then, of course, Sunday stream. But how about you guys? Oh, and then this. So this Saturday, I hope you all have planned to support an independent bookstore somehow, either be on your social media and retweet their posts or go to a bookstore and buy a book. So I don't know if you've seen, I was reposting some stories on Instagram. there's these like Prime Days and there's like Black Fridays and all that shite. Well, now they came up with an Amazon book sale and they're doing it like now until Sunday. So obviously they're trying to horn in on Independent Bookstore Day and take market share from like the one freaking day a year that independent bookstores have marked out for their fan base. And I'm just like, get the fuck out, Amazon. Just like read the room and leave. And so this is why I want people to really show up in support of their independent bookstores, their local bookstores, and buy a book, buy anything. Support them with social media, whatever you can do to show people that that is where their interest lies. That is where their community is welcome. That is where they can gather, they can talk, and they can organize. And yeah, fight back. So that's my little preachy bit. And how about you guys? What are you doing? So Elaine said, just remembered a funny thing about the tree book. The early part talks about Yellowstone, wolves, and changes. Yeah, that's actually a controversial remark because among scientists, this study is overhyped, apparently. And while, yes, it has some meaningful points, a lot of the scientists have told me that, yeah, it overstates the case and wolves are not the keystone species or whatever was claimed. And I'm like, but anyway. And Mojo says, book 3 in My Spirits of the Orishas comes out tomorrow. Excellent. Mojo has a wrench. Do you have a link to drop? That would be good. Yeah, you do. So drop a link to pre-order. Elaine says, agreed, Boudica winning would have made for a different world. Can you imagine? I'm not good at imagining alternate history because there's just too many threads. But like, can you imagine if Rome never got to Britain? What would Britain be like today? What would America be like today? I mean, the mind boggles. My mind is boggling. Yeah. Brown Girl reading. Hey. Listening to you and cooking. Hey, Dee Dee. Thanks for saying hello. Cooking time. Dans la cuisine. Excellent. Ew, Amazon, for fuck's sake. Exactly. Totally. So a lot of bookstores have clapped back with their posts and they're like, gross. And I was like, yes, that's the energy. We want to shame them out. But of course, they can't be shamed. Typical crap. Yeah. Wow. Yay. Okay, so Mysteries of the Orishas. And there is Mojo's link if you want to check out the book and order for it's come out tomorrow on a Thursday. Oh, happy Shakespeare's birthday today, by the way. Elaine says, scientists have a biased opinion. Lol, just me. Plus, they just brought the dire wolf back. Is that a specific type? I don't know about that one, that headline. It's always the road not taken. What could have been, right? Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Oh, Dee Dee has her book club on Saturday, but maybe I'll order from an independent bookstore here online. Yes, please do. Yeah, it's like the little glee, the little schadenfreude glee of seeing the Tesla stock price go down. I want to see, I mean, obviously that's why they're having a sale on this weekend is because they're seeing hurting in their sales. But like, I really want to see people double up on their Amazon bird watching, right? Yeah. Game of Thrones. Okay. I don't know what that relates to. Laura says, oh yeah, the new dire wolves are cute. Wolves are cute. 3 pups, breed that hasn't been around for eons. Oh, so they're reintroducing or something with the breeding. Okay. But like, watch Jurassic Park, please, scientists. Right. Yeah. How? Were they featured on the series? Or were they in the books? I haven't watched the series or read the books, Monique. This is why I'm so lost. Oh, man. Yeah, Target is trying so hard to get Black people back in to buy. It's like, capitulate and see what happens. FAFO, right? Yeah, Colombia, like, we can't help you now. Yeah, but I'm really thankful and grateful to the people who are holding the line and saying, "No, see you in court." So, blech, blech. All right, so that is it for today's wrap up. Thank you for watching, everybody. Remember Independent Bookstore Day on Saturday. Maybe I'll see you on Friday morning right after Dee Dee's Friday reads. And yeah, stay safe out there. Take care of yourselves. Listen deeply. And happy reading, everyone. Bye.